From comedy legends to hit musicians, these stars of the 70s seemed like they would live forever, or at least have long careers. But tragically, that's not how things turned out. John Belushi may not have been Saturday Night Live's original breakout star, but the actor who embodied the term wild card is inseparable from the show's early history. Unfortunately, part of what made him such a magnetic star also led to his early death.
I'll be forced to cut off his drugs. Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
His insatiable appetite for drugs wasn't exactly a secret, and in the end, that desire to keep the good times going resulted in him being found dead in a bungalow at LA's Chateau Marmont. The coroner's report confirmed it was indeed a fatal overdose, the result of mixing heroin and cocaine. For those who knew him, there was a certain inevitability to Belushi's tragic fate. As his widowed wife Judy told People in 2020, John was always the guy who went a little too far and wanted to stay too long at the party. When popularizing Jamaican reggae music across the world is only a small part of your legacy, it's safe to say you've made a massive cultural impact. That was the case for Bob Marley, the musician who became a cultural and political force throughout the world. In a case of bitter irony, the death of a man who made such a big impact on the world began with a little toe. Marley injured the toenail on one of his big toes while playing soccer with friends in 1977. A dark spot formed under the nail and only got worse with time before he saw a doctor. A biopsy confirmed the presence of a rare and fast-moving type of skin cancer, acral lentiginous melanoma. The doctors recommended he amputate the toe to halt the cancer from infecting him further, but Marley refused on the basis of his Rastafarian faith, which considered amputation of any body part to be a sin. Before long, the cancer had spread to his lungs, brain, and other parts of his body. In May of 1981, he was on a flight to Jamaica to receive an award, but once in the air, his condition worsened so much that the plane was diverted to Miami. Marley was rushed to Cedars of Lebanon Hospital, where he died at 36 years old. Playboy may not mean much today, but in the pre-internet days of the 70s, Hugh Hefner's magazine was iconic, and a few of the women who helped supply the publication's racy photos also used it as a springboard to Hollywood success. Among that select group was Dorothy Stratten, who was an 18-year-old working at a Vancouver Dairy Queen when she fell in with small-time pimp Paul Snider. In a vile and manipulative move, he convinced the reluctant Dorothy to pose naked, then sent the photos to Playboy. Before long, Snider's sleazeball behavior paid off for Stratten. She became one of Hef's favorites and began attending star-studded parties in the infamous Playboy Mansion. Hobnobbing with Hollywood elites led to Stratten landing some small roles on TV, before starring in the cheesy 1980 sci-fi film Galaxina. Acclaimed director Peter Bogdanovich liked what he saw from the young performer, and he gave her a serious acting role in his film They All Laughed. Stratten married Snider in 1979, but complications arose when she fell in love with Bogdanovich. The couple separated, but in August 1980, Stratten went to see Snider at his home in order to negotiate their divorce. Snider, distraught and desperate, sexually assaulted her and then shot her dead before turning the shotgun on himself. She was just 20 years old. A stand-up icon who brought laughs on both stage and the silver screen, Richard Pryor dominated the comedy landscape of the 1970s, even as the latter part of the decade saw him dealing with a severe cocaine addiction. By 1980, Pryor had taken to freebasing his cocaine, in other words, heating it up and smoking it in a glass pipe. Pryor sustained second- and third-degree burns over half of his body after a freebasing attempt gone awry. Most people would take that apparent lesson from the universe and change their ways. Pryor took it and turned it into part of his act.
All the people you ever heard of freebasing, have you ever heard of anybody blowing up? Why me?
In 1986, Pryor was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and the ensuing years saw his physical condition deteriorate at a slow but steady rate. But though it left him exhausted, Pryor continued performing stand-up, and he earned an Emmy nomination by portraying an MS patient on the medical drama Chicago Hope. He continued to appear sporadically on TV until the late 1990s, at which point he was simply too frail. He died in 2005, aged 65. Lynyrd Skynyrd didn't take long to establish themselves as the quintessential southern rock band, with their debut album including the songs Tuesday's Gone, Gimme 3 Steps, and a little ditty you may have heard of called Free Bird. The band appeared to be unstoppable, but tragedy doesn't care how famous you are, it simply comes for you. In 1977, a plane chartered by the band crashed after running out of fuel. Among the 6 souls on board that were lost was lead singer and lyricist Ronnie Van Zant. It was a chilling realization to Van Zant's own prophecy, as his widowed wife Judy claimed that Ronnie had told her many times that he would never live to see 30. He was 29 at the time of the crash. Freddie Prinze needed less than 6 minutes to catapult him into the showbiz stratosphere. At the ripe old age of 19, Prinze made the most of his brief appearance on The Tonight Show, and just 9 months later, he was starring in his own sitcom, Chico and the Man.
The LA Zoo is great, but I understand the sign in the monkey house says, "Please do not annoy the monkeys." What are they, busy?
But Prinze struggled with that rapid rise to stardom, suffering from depression due to his newfound fame and the recent end of his marriage. Martin Snyder, his agent, heard that his client was struggling and paid him a visit in January 1977. In an indictment of both Prinze's past behavior and how mental health was viewed back then, Snyder arrived to find Prinze holding a gun and essentially shrugged it off. Prinze had reportedly threatened suicide so many times in the past 18 months that nobody in his circle took his threats seriously anymore. As Prinze's publicist, Paul Wasserman, later told the New York Times, the people who saw it didn't take it quite as seriously as perhaps they might. They couldn't believe it when Freddie, who seemed to have everything to live for, told them life wasn't worth living. Unfortunately, what was brushed aside came to fruition in the worst way possible, and Prinze died by suicide that day at just 22 years old. If you stopped to ask a random passerby to name the person that comes to mind when you say Kung Fu, the answer you'd likely get, other than Leave Me Alone, would be Bruce Lee. After getting his start as the sidekick Kato in The Green Hornet, Lee's martial arts movies of the 1970s essentially became an entire subgenre unto themselves, with 1973's Enter the Dragon serving as his magnum opus. Sadly, all of the accolades came posthumously, as the film was released weeks after Lee's death at 32. To say his passing was unexpected is an understatement. One July day in 1973, Lee laid down for a nap to nurse a headache, and the martial arts master never woke up. The cause of Lee's mysterious death was subsequently discovered to be a cerebral edema, which had caused his brain to swell. At the time, medical professionals believed that it was brought about by an adverse reaction to some medication he'd been prescribed. However, more recent theories indicate the condition may have been caused by heat stroke, or possibly from drinking too much water. What happens when you combine androgyny, sci-fi, and some righteous guitar power chords? You get the originators of glam rock, otherwise known as Marc Bolan and his band T-Rex.
Babe, I wanna be your man.
By the mid-1970s, glam had phased out, and Bolan was struggling with a drug habit, but Bolan and T-Rex busted out of their slump with the 1977 comeback album, Dandy in the Underworld. As Captain Sensible, awesome namehaver and bassist for The Damned, told Classic Rock, Marc was firing on all cylinders. He was excited, he had a great band, and the songs were getting better. Sadly, Bolan didn't have much time to bask in the adoration of the album. In September of '77, Bolan was sitting in the passenger seat of his Mini when his girlfriend, Gloria Jones, accidentally swerved into a tree. She was severely injured, and though she eventually made a full recovery, Bolan died at the scene. He was 29. By 1973, 30-year-old Jim Croce had begun to experience success after years of struggling. As he once told Rolling Stone about his journey, "I've had to get in and out of music a couple of times, because music didn't always mean a living. You don't make that much in bars. I still have memories of those nights, playing for $25 a night with nobody listening." But the release of his third album, which featured his signature song, Bad Bad Leroy Brown, changed everything for Croce, as the song, After Brown, rocketed to the top of the charts.
There you better just beware of a man named Leroy Brown.
However, he was only able to enjoy his chart-topping success for a few months. In September 1973, Croce was accompanied by his guitarist, manager, and booking agent in a small aircraft, chartered to take them from Louisiana to Texas. The single-engine plane barely made it off the ground when the aircraft hit a tree near the end of the runway during takeoff. After spinning around in the air, the plane crashed to the ground, killing the pilot and all 4 passengers. Known as the man who broke Al Pacino's heart in The Godfather Part 2, John Cazale only appeared in 5 movies. But holy cow, talk about nailing every choice. His cinematic legacy lives on because each of those movies is a bona fide classic. The Conversation, The Godfather Parts 1 and 2, Dog Day Afternoon, and The Deer Hunter. After filming 1975's Dog Day Afternoon, Cazale returned to the stage in New York, where he met a talented young actor who you've probably never heard of before, Meryl Streep. They fell in love, yet their romance quickly faced a crisis when Cazale, a heavy smoker, was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer.
I don't want the cancer.
He was growing progressively more ill when he was cast in The Deer Hunter. Streep had become his full-time caregiver and took a role in the film in order to be close to him. Others chipped in to ensure that Cazale could keep his role. Robert De Niro personally paid Cazale's insurance premiums, and director Michael Cimino rearranged the shooting schedule so that Cazale's scenes could be filmed first. Cazale managed to complete work on the film, but didn't live long enough to see the completed movie. Cazale died in March 1978 at age 42, with Streep by his side.